Welcome. This is Charlie from Common Sense News for You, bringing you a short educational video about the Muslim Brotherhood. If you're like me, you are familiar with the name of this group and know that they dislike anything associated with Western culture. However, beyond that, most people are not familiar with this group. But I am here to inform if only they would listen. So, why are we not seeing more in the mainstream media? It's simple. It is censorship of the goals of Muslim extremists, and that is clear-cut. Islam rules all. Sorry, but that is not acceptable to me, not at all. But for the progressives, this group is their base, even if they are out to destroy the country we know. Progressives want a country they can control from birth to the death of all Americans. They want to dictate everything, like in communist North Korea. But there is one big problem for the left, and that is support for LGBTQ ideology, which does not exist in Islam. Currently, Muslim extremists are willing to accept this as long as the ignorant are marching in the streets to support Hamas. If for any reason the Muslims have their way, there would be no LGBTQ individuals allowed to live. How stupid is it that these people support radical Muslims who want nothing to do with them? Western women supporting Hamas are supporting the degradation of women with no rights. Beating a wife is expected as part of extremist Islam. But yet, they march. Unbelievable. The following cover from the New York Post sums up what Muslim extremists think about the support from progressives. Useful infidel. A perfect description for the ignorant who would not survive in a Muslim country. For crying out loud, look at the cover and the blurring of the top half of a Hollywood star supporting Hamas. She would be stoned, whipped, or beaten if she wore this in a Muslim country. All of these folks are useful infidels and don't even know it. The following information comes from the Gatestone Institute, a reputable news organization that covers topics our mainstream media often ignores intentionally. So, who is the Muslim Brotherhood that journalists tend to avoid discussing? Quick note: if you are reading this, everything in italics is from Gatestone. The Muslim Brotherhood is a transnational Islamist organization that has networks and affiliates in the United States. While the U.S. government has designated the Muslim Brotherhood's Palestinian branch, Hamas, and some of the MB's other affiliates as terrorist organizations, it has not designated the Muslim Brotherhood itself as a terrorist organization. The MB poses a significant threat not only to stability and security in the Middle East and North Africa, but also in the U.S. and Europe. Based on this quote, the Muslim Brotherhood is a major organization with arms that reach around the world, which is not necessarily a bad thing until you start looking at the goals of this group, which no one wants to discuss. And there is a good reason for the supporters of this group not to discuss the facts, but this article does. Muslim Brotherhood founder Hassan al-Banna openly announced that his aim was to bring back the Islamic Caliphate. The Muslim Brotherhood's official English-language website quotes Banna. Islam does not recognize geographical boundaries, nor does it acknowledge racial and blood differences, considering all Muslims as one ummah, global community of Muslims. The Muslim Brethren believe that the Caliphate is a symbol of Islamic union and an indication of the bonds between the nations of Islam. They see the Caliphate and its re-establishment as a top priority. According to a report by the Counter-Extremism Project, CEP, Banna was concerned with what he considered the greatest threat to Islam: the rise of secularism and Western culture in Muslim societies. To counter this danger, Banna began dawah, proselytization in schools, mosques, and coffee houses, spreading his pan-Islamist ideology and emphasizing the need to return to Sharia. Okay, I might be out of touch, but if you read between the lines, the goal is a world takeover with Islamic religious leaders in charge. This goal is well known but rarely discussed, which is beyond me. However, The progressives seem to be okay with this. Now that is concerning. You can bet that if this were a Christian movement, it would be making headlines, as it already is with the Charlie Kirk Memorial. Islamic extremism and its associated culture don't belong in the US, or Europe for that matter, but it seems no one but Trump dares to attack this issue. A big issue, because the Muslim Brotherhood is in our country, actively promoting an Islamic takeover using our ignorant young kids who are uninformed about Islam and happily enjoy the protesting. They are young and this is exciting, but many are clueless about what they are marching for, which is laughable. Our universities are full of supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood, including professors, administration, and numerous foreign students who probably should not have been allowed an education visa. Why would we educate people who openly state their hate for Israel and Western society in general? Let me pause for a second and clarify that this piece is about the Muslim Brotherhood, not all Muslims. Please make sure not to put all Muslims in the same bucket because we have numerous peace-loving Muslims living in this country. The issue is that they are afraid to speak out because they will be threatened and killed for the cause. Muslim extremists play for keeps, and life means nothing when it comes to Islam. The Muslims need a Charlie Kirk type to lead the way because Muslim extremists are a minority, but like progressives, they use hate, violence, and any means necessary to shut down the truth. Always remember, truth matters. If you have any doubts about whether the Muslim Brotherhood is in the U.S., read the following from our Department of Justice. According to the Department of Justice, in the early 1990s, the Muslim Brotherhood planned to establish a network of organizations in the U.S. to spread a militant Islamist message and raise money for Hamas. The Texas-based Holy Land Foundation for Relief and Development, HLF, became the chief fundraising arm for the Palestine Committee in the U.S., created by the MB to support Hamas. In 2008, HLF leaders were convicted of crimes, including providing material support for Hamas. At least our government is aware, but the problem lies with the progressives, who won't admit that the Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization. We have more Muslims in Congress than ever before, and we need to think really hard about what this impact will have on our future. Not to be mean, but I can't see Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib ever voting to identify the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. Their culture puts Islam above all else, which is interesting given that they signed an oath to our country when sworn in. It is time to consider whether we need to impose requirements for those running for Congress, starting with the rule that candidates must be born here in the United States to serve. Think about it. How many non-US born people with citizenship lack respect for our culture, yet they want to live here? Too many to count. So, why should any of these people serve in Congress? This should at least be a debate. We already limit the presidency to people born in the U.S., on American soil. So, how do I know this? Because, like many in my generation, I dreamed of being president as a kid. However, upon researching it, I was disappointed to find that I did not meet the qualifications. My father was in the army and stationed in Europe when I was born, in Austria, which makes me a naturalized citizen. Naturalized individuals are not allowed to serve as president, though this has not yet been tested. No matter. It's not on my list to try, but someday someone will, and the Supreme Court will have to decide its legality. My point is that anyone who wants to serve as a politician should be born on our soil. I also believe that naturalized citizens whose parents served our country should be treated as if they were born on U.S. soil. For me, I've been an American since day one, just saying. The following are the requirements to be president. What is our government doing to address the religious goals of Islam that don't align with our culture? At least not easily. Until Islam becomes a truly peaceful religion, We will always need to stay alert because they continuously push for a world of Islam that conflicts with other religions or atheism, for that matter. The following are thoughts from the Gatestone article. Jihad means the fighting of the unbelievers and involves all possible efforts that are necessary to dismantle the power of the enemies of Islam, including beating them, plundering their wealth, destroying their places of worship, and smashing their idols. Muslim Brotherhood founder Hassan al-Banna, The Way of Jihad. Muslim Brotherhood-affiliated groups and networks are also exceedingly active in Europe and are richly funded by EU institutions. The question is not whether the U.S. government should list the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. The answer to that is clear: yes, it should. A more pressing question is why these pro-jihad, Islamic supremacist organizations affiliated with the MB have been allowed to operate on the U.S. soil for all those years. These points are true, but the progressives couldn't care less because they support the terrorists as part of their voting base. For the Republicans, they need to keep pushing hard to get this group out of our country and put them on the terrorist list. Europe also needs to be held accountable because they are allowing a takeover in European countries, which are filling up with Muslims, including many Islamic extremists, and this continues today. London is currently a Muslim city, with a Muslim mayor using censorship to an extreme degree. Why is Europe funding terrorists? This is crazy, and the citizens of these countries are just starting to speak up after being overwhelmed by woke policies. Europe is weak and struggling because it is now realizing, for the first time, that it is under attack. However, they are not willing to take any action to stop it. It will only get worse before any change happens in the EU. As far as our country is concerned, we need to act quickly and remove all the extremists who have found sanctuary under Joe Biden. It's unbelievable how people sit by without concern for our national defense, while terrorist after terrorist enters our country freely. It's sad that the progressives fully support what's happening because it's all about power and control by the government. What happened to good old patriotism and American culture? Slowly, it is returning, all thanks to Trump. At least one politician is speaking out, and that is Ted Cruz, stating the following: "The Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization, and it provides support to Muslim Brotherhood branches that are terrorist organizations. One of those branches is Hamas, which on October 7 committed the worst single-day massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, which included the murder and kidnapping of at least 53 Americans. They are committed to the overthrow and destruction of America and other non-Islamist governments across the world and pose an acute threat to American national security interests. American allies in the Middle East and Europe have already labeled the Brotherhood a terrorist organization, and the United States should do the same, and do so expeditiously." Ted is right. Now, we need the rest of Congress to take action and shut down this terrorist group, along with the funders, who are probably from Islamic countries filled with countless billionaires with nothing else to spend their money on. After all, they already own palaces, gold toilets, boats, planes, and everything else they need. So why not quietly support groups that to them are not terrorists, even if they can't say it? Many of these individuals are our so-called allies. The one thing you must never forget is that Islam always comes first throughout the Middle East. What is impressive is that, according to this article, countries including Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates have labeled the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. This shows that peaceful Islamic nations want this group gone because they are causing chaos in their countries, which have many silent Muslim extremists. Our government knows everything it needs to classify this group as terrorists, but what's causing the delay? Politics and the progressives are standing firm with the Islamic extremists because Muslims are a significant voting bloc. Let's close this with a report from the House of Representatives that concerns itself with how much influence anti-Americans have to operate freely. That is what we are doing for now. Hopefully, Trump will clean up the mess before his term ends, or at least give the next president a solid handoff. During a 2018 hearing in the U.S. House of Representatives regarding national security entitled The Muslim Brotherhood's Global Threat, then U.S. Representative Ron DeSantis said, "The Muslim Brotherhood is a militant Islamist organization with affiliates in over 70 countries, including groups designated as terrorist organizations by the U.S. Whether the Muslim Brotherhood writ large should be designated as a foreign terrorist organization has been the topic of debate here in Congress in recent years and has been under consideration by the Trump administration. Thankfully, the Trump administration has discarded the Obama-era policy of treating the Brotherhood as a potential ally. Now the questions are focused on how expansive to make the terror designation and whether it should be done through the State Department or Treasury Department. There is much more to this article, and I recommend you read it because you won't find this information in the mainstream media. I can't understand why they ignore this major story. Either they support the terrorists or are clueless. I believe they are clueless because they only follow an ideology, not reality. Europe is in serious trouble because it has supported this group and continues to do so. The European culture is being replaced by a Muslim culture, and the globalist, mostly white leaders are okay with that. Why? It doesn't affect them personally in their gated communities. But the people and citizens are starting to stand up because they feel ignored by the government's prioritizing Muslim immigration without assimilation. Women are being raped on the streets with no consequences, and there's much more. The European culture is changing, and not for the better, in my opinion. The following should open your eyes. No one sums up the Muslim Brotherhood's eerie vision for Europe better than the figurehead of nonviolent Islamism, Yusuf al-Qaradawi, as he stated on Qatar TV in July 2007. The peaceful conquest has foundations in this religion, and therefore, I expect that Islam will conquer Europe without resorting to the sword or fighting. It will do so by means of da'wah and ideology. The ultimate goal of the Muslim Brotherhood is to build a global Islamic caliphate based on Sharia law, meaning a complete end to the freedoms, sovereignty, and democracy in the West and other parts of the world. The MB's ideology is Islamic supremacist, violent, and totalitarian, undermining the security and liberties of various nations across the world. The question is not whether the U.S. government should list the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. The answer to that is clear: yes, it should. A more pressing question is why these pro-jihad, Islamic supremacist organizations affiliated with the MB have been allowed to operate on U.S. soil for all those years. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Be safe, be informed, and think common sense where truth matters. Note: I will state again that you should not bucket all Muslims as the same. Just like there are Christian organizations with extremists, that doesn't make them all a threat. Use your common sense.